Well, welcome. My name is Emma Clues. I have the very great honor of serving at Great Rivers Greenway, and we are turning 25 this year. Yes, that's right. Last Friday was the 25th anniversary of the vote of the people that created us, and so we're very excited to be celebrating our anniversary. And one of the things that we're doing is this wonderful panel program as a partnership with Focus St. Louis and St. Louis County Libraries. Just as a quick show of hands, who has ever been on a Greenway before? You won't offend me. Okay, solid crowd. And who is excited to hear from our incredible panelists this morning? Yeah, that's right. We have a wonderful crew. We'll get to that in just a minute, but I just want to mention that part of what we're excited about today is, a lot of you, if you've used the Greenways, you know some of the basics, right? It's good for your exercise, for your mental and physical health, getting fresh air, getting where you need to go. What we're doing today is really going beyond those basic individual benefits and thinking about the civic power of greenways and parks and open spaces to really have an impact on our region, on our civic health, collaboration, engagement, all of those types of things. I also want to give a little shout out if you've not yet met our new CEO, Mark Perkins. Mark, raise your hand. Please say hello before you leave. We're thrilled to have him on board, and if you haven't met him, you can do so before you leave. And I just wanted to kind of mention, civic engagement or civic power means a lot of different things to different people. So, you can define that however you'd like, but by a show of hands, how many people think that means voting? Voting is a form of civic engagement, or attending a public meeting, or participating in your neighborhood, or taking care of someone in your community. Yes, you're all right. Spoiler alert, they're all correct. But it can mean so many different things. It can mean, mutual aid in our neighborhoods. It can mean a very formal structured getting involved with a campaign, but anything that really helps to enhance civic life. And that's part of some of the themes that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our dear friend and partner, Yemi Akande Barsh with Focus St. Louis.
Thank you. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. As Emma said, I'm Yemi Akande Barsh. I have the privilege of leading Focus St. Louis. When we started talking about this event, I was telling Kristen Sorth, it seemed like yesterday, and here we are. So it's really exciting to see everyone in the room today. I know a number of you have been on many of the trails. I was curious, did anyone hike this morning? Okay, Deb here. Let's give Deb a round of applause. Yeah, she's going afterwards. And Deb, maybe I will join you on the trails that's right here to my car or something like that. But we're grateful that you're choosing to spend your time here with us this morning for this very important and energizing conversation. Today's panel, as you'll find out shortly, brings together thoughtful, local, national voices who deeply understand what Emma mentioned earlier, and that is how public spaces, especially our region's greenway trails, shape civic life. Greenways do more than provide recreation. They connect neighborhoods, they support economic vitality, and strengthen the social fabric of our region. We are being joined today, also in the audience, by visionaries and leaders who are helping us reimagine what vibrant, equitable, connected communities can look like. And that's what we're going to hear today. I'm excited about the conversation. I'm looking forward to what I believe is going to be an inspiring and engaging conversation, one that not only challenges us, one that informs us, and one that invites us to imagine what's possible when we lead and we hike on the trails together. Thank you again for being here. Let's get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Sorth. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Sorth, and I'm the Director and CEO of the St. Louis County Library District. Welcome to the Clark Family Branch. Raise your hand if you have never been here before. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this space is amazing. So after we are finished, please walk around and check out the space. We have a space for teens, for kids. We have a world-class history and genealogy center here. We also have a small business center, so there's a little bit of something for everyone. And we also host what we say is the largest author event series of any public library in the country here. So we have amazing authors, and we have tons of people that come see our author events. So check us out. I want to talk a little bit about our panelists, and I'm seated next to Rodney, which is sure to be trouble because when we're on panels together, people tend to set us apart, right? So before I start, we always talk about the library being for everyone, and not everybody feels that way. And I think that's the same way about Greenways. I think people often think we talked about this in our pre-panel discussion, that people think it's for those guys riding their bikes with their helmets going really fast on the trails. And so that is not the case. So I want to ask all of you really quick, how do you use the trails? And the greenways? Who bikes? Who's a biker? Okay. Who walks? Wow, all right. Who uses it as a connector to connect with other places and people? Who bird watches? Aw, yay. Who attends programs? Great. I think that's great. So I think it's our responsibility to tell that story to other people when they say, oh, a greenway isn't really for me. I'm not a biker, or I'm not a bicyclist. I'm not whatever. I think we need to share that out. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to get started. My first introduction is of Mallory. So Mallory Roxana Nazam is a cross-sector culture maker who loves cities and believes that we have the tools to make them more just and joyful. Through her interdisciplinary practice, Justice and Joy, she engages stakeholders across sectors to de-silo the way we run cities and build new models of creative cross-sectional collaboration. As a co-founder of the cross-sector Artists in Residence Lab, she helped embed artists in government and other sectors. She also serves as the curator of partnerships and programs for Forward, by Forecast Public Art, a publication and conversation series spotlighting how artists are critical problem solvers addressing urgent issues of our time. Raised in St. Louis, she founded St. Louis Improv Anywhere and co-founded the St. Louis Artivists. She seeks to be in every room she's not supposed to be in. Let's give a big hand for Mallory. And then Shaughnessy Daniels is the Director of Civic Engagement at Great Rivers Greenway, where she leads the agency's efforts to gather critical input to guide planning and implementation for Greenway projects. Shaughnessy's career has been focused on strengthening communities and the people that live within them. She has a long history and broad range of experience in nonprofit development, community, and capacity in local civic efforts. Prior to joining Great Rivers Greenway, Shaughnessy served as Vice President of Community Supports at St. Louis ARC, a local nonprofit that supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and Vice President at Urban Strategies, Inc. Shaughnessy also serves as Assistant to the President at St. Louis 2004, a citizen-based initiative to launch major regional revitalization projects, including Great Rivers Greenway. Let's welcome Shaughnessy. Rodney Krim, one of the funniest people you will ever meet ever, is the CEO and president, you know it's true, is the president of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, a regional economic development organization for St. Louis City and St. Louis County. The organization provides business attraction, retention, and expansion services, facilitates innovation and entrepreneurship, and owns and manages 4 business incubators. The organization also sponsors a World Trade Center. I lost my page, hold on. Develops and manages strategic, it's so long, Rodney. It's like 2 pages long, and manages strategic real estate projects facilitates the connection between businesses and workforce providers, and leads a number of other initiatives. What other initiatives? There's so many. Please, please, please welcome Rodney. And John John. John John is an avid urbanist, national speaker, and content creator, passionate about decoding what makes spaces great. His TikTok channels have garnered over 8.6 million likes and 406,000 followers. After spending 8 months abroad exploring cities, he continues to advocate for better urban spaces. Let's welcome John John Wesolowski. Okay. Let's get started with our panel of amazing speakers. So first, I want to give you all each a chance to cover one thing I didn't mention about you, and your favorite way to spend time outside. So let's start with that. Rodney, you want to start?
Good morning, everybody. And so with my favorite outside activity is cycling. And I was fortunate when I came here from Chicago to connect with TrailNet at the time, and Cindy Mintz and the team. And they got me involved so much so that they asked me to be on the board, and seemed like I was on the board forever for that organization. But yeah, that's what we like to do, is really do a lot of cycling, and it's just a lot of great trails to be able to do that, both here on the St. Louis side and Madison County side. So thank you all for being here. But Cindy, thanks for helping us with our transition by doing something we really love to do.
What's one thing I didn't mention about you?
That I've lived in 3 places, Chicago, Minneapolis, and now St. Louis, and all of them have been great, and all of them kind of led to experiences that impacted my personal life, but also impacted my professional life. So I'm thankful for those 3 experiences.
Mallory?
It was us talking about where you lived. We were talking about Minneapolis, and we were talking about ice, as you do when you talk about Minneapolis. And so you failed to mention my competitive figure skating days.
What?
Yes. I can still do some twirls on the ice, but no jumps anymore.
That needs to be in your bio.
Probably,
for sure.
probably. I also am a cyclist. I love cycling, and I also travel a lot. And I have it is safe, a collapsible helmet. And so it flattens out, and I like to travel with it because it allows me to explore cities on bike safely with a helmet using their bike share. And I do my best thinking on my bike. It's like one of the places where I get my best ideas. So cycling is it for me.
John John?
So for me, my outdoor thing that I love, spending outdoors, I'm such a poser. I haven't done a lot of this, but it's freshwater snorkeling is like my new favorite thing. So I live in East Tennessee. Appalachia has some of the most biodiverse greenways and waterways and blueways. And my goal is in the next couple of years to find a giant salamander, which Google them, they're huge. And then as far as like something you didn't mention, I'm obsessed with skateboarding, even though I do not skate. And the first thing I did when I came to St. Louis was look up some local skate history, go to that spot, and make a video on it. So you'll see that coming soon. I can't explain it, but it kind of ties into how skateboarders view the city as like kind of changed the way I view a city.
Shaughnessy?
So, when I was a kid, I was a sprinter. I haven't sprinted anywhere in a really long time, though, and I would love to get back to running on the Greenway. So, looking around the room, I see lots of friends. Hold me accountable, make me get out there and jog maybe at least a quarter of a mile. One thing that you didn't mention is that, I was at 2004, but I was the youngest staff person at 2004.
I think I agree. Were
Yeah.
you like 12?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's about right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next opening question after we learned some new things about all of you. When you think about civic infrastructure like greenways and parks, how would you describe success? And talk about, in your answer, the power they have and the impact they leave on a community. Let's start at the end. Let's start with Shaughnessy.
Sure. So, Greenways, to me, success is their true natural common ground. There are places, and this is not only the physical sense of common ground, but there are places where people can gather together physically, but there are also places where people can collaborate. When we plan, design, and build these greenways and have these wonderful places for people to use, we have to work with a lot of people. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. When we're talking about local municipalities and regional agencies, and the elected officials, our technical partners, the utilities, the railroads, the city departments, the neighborhood leaders, the neighbors, community partners, and businesses. We're working with all of these groups at the same time to come to some consensus around a common goal for a community. And so, the real power in that is that we're able to build relationships, and we're able to build civic trust, not only with us as an agency, but with among all those groups within those groups, so with each other. And so I think that success for me is that we're pulling people together and they're working together and they're coming up with a community benefit, and we're walking away with good relationships and trust.
John?
So I totally agree with that, and I think what's so powerful is I like to think of cities as like a living organism. And so if I'm trying to put this into an analogy, I would think of a greenway as a sort of an artery that's bringing life to different parts of a city or to a neighborhood. And so when you think of how roadways were used during the highway expansion era, they were used as walls. They were redlining neighborhoods. They were bulldozing neighborhoods. They were decreasing access. And what I like about greenways is they seem small in ambition, but they start with the smallest, most viable product of a person, an individual at a small level, and then they help feed and create community. So that's like, in my mind, I'm looking at veins and arteries going through the city and Greenway bringing life and spreading it to different parts of the city.
Mallory?
Yeah, I feel like we're all building off of each other, because I was going to say stitching. I think at their best, greenways can reconnect us. Stitching, activating, and nourishing. Those are the three words that came to mind. Stitching community back together because of all of the various other infrastructures and social infrastructures that divide. Activating, because I think greenways kind of pull up what's already along its path, bringing people out of buildings, bringing people together, activating physical space. And then nourishing, because I also, when I think about greenways, I think it's not just people on the greenway, it's not just the infrastructure of the greenway, it's not just the plants and waterways, it's also businesses. And so I think at their best, they're also thinking about the ecosystems around them, they're thinking about the economics of place, they're not displacing, and instead they're really nourishing what's already there and helping things to grow.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that have been said, I don't want to repeat, but I agree with all of them. The thing that I also think it does is it brings communities together in an inclusive way. That when you look at various communities, you want to see that everybody's kind of getting the same benefits and enjoying the same experiences. And so greenways and planning them so that you do create that kind of result is really important. So then everybody feels like they own it. It's part of them. They help protect it. They call the police if there are any issues because it's part. You want to make it theirs, and so that's helpful. Plus, we're in the selling business, so we're always trying to sell what's great about the St. Louis region. And having these greenways really adds an amenity that others will say, "Oh, okay, they have those. Okay, let's look at them a little bit more." And so those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, of course.
here. When I came out here, I posted on my story. I said, "Hey, I'm coming to St. Louis. What should I do?" And I got all sort of recommendations. There was all sort of like, a lot of people said City Museum, a lot of it. GRG and Great Rivers Greenway came up the most out of everything else. So as far as like a marketing thing, I know this is anecdotal, but I got dozens of answers, and the most common one was check out this portion of the Greenway, or check out this upcoming portion of the Greenway, or it was actually quite fantastic. I was like, that's actually why I'm here, is to talk about the Greenway.
That's awesome. Did you have other questions like go eat toasted ravioli and
So someone
try-
brought up toasted ravioli. I was like, what is this thing?
Yes.
I think there was like a hot dog or a pretzel that has like a hot dog in it that was sold
Yes,
to see.
Gus's.
Yep. And then so I got a lot of ones that were like I was not expecting, but then also the typical City Museum,
Yeah.
etc.
My son's girlfriend is from Detroit, and her family was here, and I went to dinner with them, and they said we tried your, what did they say, your oiled pasta or something. They said something really weird, and I was like, what are you talking about? And I said, oh, you mean toasted ravioli. It was really weird. And I said, did you like it? And they said, it was interesting. Like, it's delicious. What is wrong with you? Okay, Shaughnessy, so talk about civic trust a little bit, because you mentioned that. And that is something I think, especially in the world where there's so many questions around systems and how systems have helped or not helped people. Talk about Greenway projects and really how they help with civic trust. And then if you have a specific example, that would be great.
Transparency and listening. So, and building relationships. I've already said that, but I'm probably going to say it 3 more times before we leave here today. In order to do a project in any of these Greenway projects, ensuring that we have heard from the community broadly, that we've had a chance to hear everyone's voices is really important to us. So I got a couple of projects where I think that we've built really good relationships and established a sense of civic trust. One of them is Trojan Park in Wellston. So the Wellston neighborhood, this was probably about 15 years ago, Emma, about 15 years ago. People would thought of Wellston as, as a disadvantage, as there's nothing really going on here. This is an area that, has been disinvested for so long. And we come into the community and we've got a blank canvas, sort of. We've got a swath of land. It's a blank canvas. It's connected to a greenway, sort of the end point of a greenway at that point. And we were able to work with amazing city leadership. The mayor of Wellston really dug in and got involved, and with the neighbors and the residents. And they told us, the history, and they told us their priorities. They told us what's really important to them. They told us what they need. And we were there to listen, and we were there to work with them to help to create opportunities to create what they needed. They told us that they wanted spaces where their children could play safely. They wanted spaces within that space where parents could sit and watch the children play. They wanted spaces where they could carry on the incredible history and legacy of the basketball teams that were there in the city through the high school. They told us a lot of things, and we worked very closely with them to help to create a space. By the way, if you haven't been to Trojan Park in Wellston, right off of Skinker, it is so well used and so well loved, because working with community, we were able to create that sense of ownership and community pride that you see today. We used to live on Delmar, the GRG offices, and I used to have to pass by Trojan Park every day on my way to work. It didn't matter if it was 7:30 in the morning or if it was 6 o'clock at night. There was always somebody in the park. There's always somebody. There was some kids playing. There were there might be somebody sitting under the pavilion, just being there. There might be somebody on the basketball court. But that was a true testament to me that, this is a space that everyone feels comfortable, everyone feels welcome, and they use it and they help to maintain it. They work with our teams to make certain that that space is always beautiful. So that's one example of how, again, working with community and engaging community helps to build that sort of relationship. And I think another one really quick is the Brickline Greenway, where, and I'll use Mill Creek Valley as an example, where this is a community that was basically erased in the name of civic progress, and that's a whole other panel discussion. But you know, we took the time to work with former residents of Mill Creek Valley who are scattered all over the country at this point, but to listen again to the history of that community and what the community was thriving. So what were the things that made this community so strong and so proud? And how can, as we are building a greenway that's coming through that former community, how can we elevate and how can we enhance that story? How can we make certain that other people know what was here? So, kudos to the entire GRG team, especially Elizabeth Simmons. Thank you so much for the work that you did to work with those residents to ensure that their stories were heard and also that their stories are told in the physical infrastructure of the Greenway.
Rodney, can you talk a little bit about what you hear from businesses that are thinking of coming here? What do they say when you say we have this system of greenways, and what it means for both them and for the employees that they're bringing here as well?
Okay. Can I tag on to
course.
what Shaughnessy was saying? Because you mentioned Wellston, and so we have an incubator in Wellston, and we also have the Met Center, which is the training facility in Wellston, which backs up to the park there. And so I couldn't agree more with working with the mayor, working with the community on getting to win-wins. And we're doing that now. There'll be some new projects in the area that'll be announced shortly. But it's that you win together as a team. So I appreciate what you're doing and then working together. So that's great. And so we're in the selling business. So, we are not only marketeers of St. Louis, the St. Louis broader region, because we serve the city, county, and the broader region. And so we are always trying to show what assets we have, because we feel like if you got some assets, you can build on those assets, and you can highlight those assets, and you try to find companies that can be good examples that we can show other companies. If they're here, then you might want to be here also. And so with greenways and other amenities, we're highlighting those. We're saying, yeah, it's not what you just saw on the news because of some incident. You need to come here, like John was saying, and experience what we have here and take you around to see different things. So having good infrastructure that competes with other cities is important. And so I'm always impressed with what Great Rivers Greenways is doing, all the assets that we do have, and just trying to build on those assets. I mean, there are a lot of examples. You'll hear about the Belt Line, you'll hear about the High Line, you hear about the Cultural Trail. You'll hear about what caught my attention a couple of weeks ago. I was in Detroit. Detroit Riverwalk, the City Riverwalk. So those are all great. And so we have those and more kind of opportunities here within the St. Louis region. So we just have to kind of lean forward and highlight those when we're talking. We do that automatically, and do that with our team. Plus, we also try to help companies that are here be part of our recruiting team. And so with that, we have a business retention and expansion committee, and that committee includes individuals from the state, Missouri Department of Economic Development. It includes our regional partners, St. Louis Development Corporation, ourselves, and GSL, Greater St. Louis Inc. It also includes our utility companies, both Spire and Ameren, and it includes our workforce development companies, both on St. Louis County side and St. Louis City side. So when we're going after companies, we're also trying to make sure we're having lots of meetings with existing companies so we know what the issues are, what the opportunities are, and by talking to them, then they help with what do we need to address to attract even more companies. And so our business retention and expansion effort has won national awards because of the inclusive nature of that process. And we're winning companies as a result of that process.
John, you have traveled extensively. You've seen all kinds of public projects and ways to engage community. You do not have to name names, but do you have any epic wins or epic fails we can learn from in St. Louis?
When I get most excited, well, let me first say this as a context. And actually, we're at a library. So if you haven't read this book before, try to be the first one to go grab it or put it on hold on Libby. Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. And Robert Putnam popularized this term social capital. And he said there's two types of it. So if you think of social capital as like the type of capital you get from relationships, what are the opportunities you get from relationships? And there's this interesting study by Raj Shetty out of Harvard who says like, hey, if you're gonna break out of poverty, the number one metric is your connection to someone in a different economic class. And that was me. I grew up incredibly poor. I was one of 9 kids in a 1,200 square foot house with 1 bathroom, no AC, no air, like no heating or air. And it was my friends that I met from church whose parents told me, what are you doing for college? I was like, I don't go to college. My parents didn't go to college. You know what I mean? They were the ones saying, are you practicing for the SATs? So this idea of social capital being so important, but there's 2 types. There's bonding and there's bridging. Bonding social capital is what makes an in-group tight and together. Think of this as survival. This is what has made communities survive hardships, is having each other. And then there's bridging social capital. It's a connection to another group that helps you advance. Think of this as thriving. So you have surviving social capital and thriving social capital. What greenways and parks do is they create hardware for social capital. So you have that church group or that family reunion that's bonding in the park, but then you also have another group that forgot to bring plates and goes and asks them for plates. And they don't just give, they make them a plate. You know, they're like, here, have some of this, extra food. And that is so important, so pivotal. And so I'm just gonna tell one story. Lafayette, Louisiana, post-COVID, had a problem. Nobody was coming to their downtown park anymore. And the story in everyone's head was, there are houseless individuals who sleep in the gazebo, families don't feel safe, they won't come. And this downtown group was told, we need to solve this problem, we need to reactivate this park. And they looked at it and they were like, what can we do? We could try to police these, kick people out so that people feel safe and hope people return. But what happens when we run out of funds? We could try to design something that makes it uncomfortable for them. We could remove the gazebo and its shade, but now we're making it uncomfortable for everyone else, including the people we want to bring here. And this is gonna out my obsession with skateboarders again. So instead they came to the city and they say, we think you should build 3 benches. It fits in with our budget of $6,000 and we think it's gonna bring the park back to life. And the city's like, okay. Then they went to a skate shop and said, hey, we have $6,000. It needs to resemble a bench in some way, shape, or form, but what could we build here that will bring skaters into the area? So the idea, instead of removing people, they decided to add people. And what those skateboarders kind of became was a buffer. It didn't kick people out of the gazebo. And a lot of times, when I was there were still people hanging out in the gazebo. But the presence of the skateboarders, the presence of other people made families who otherwise felt uncomfortable by their presence, it sort of like inoculated them against that. And the park came back to life. And then once the park started showing life, the city's like, let's get you some extra funding. And now there's like splash pads. It's a great park. It's full of life. And that to me was like, it looked at the human connectedness, the social capital, and said, how do we build social capital with what we have? And if you Google this story, the benches are laughable because they're just concrete boxes. And people do sit on them. I sat on them when I was there. They're a ledge the right sitting height, but they tricked the city into building skateboarding infrastructure to help bring that park back to life.
I think that I just wrote this down. Removing people instead adding people. Like, I think that is something that we can all think about, like for public libraries too. We were in the business, I think, of not necessarily removing people, but having them come in and then get out as fast as possible. And now we've got all these spaces for people that they didn't think belonged to them. So I think that translates into so many aspects of our lives, for sure. I wrote it down. I'm using that. Thank you. Mallory, you are an expert on bringing joy and creativity into the public realm. You work all over the place, but can you share a St. Louis example of a project or a process where thinking outside the box led to increased civic ownership or pride?
Yes, I can. I think first I want to hone in a little bit on the word civic. Because when I first started using it, I similarly, and I love the questions at the beginning, like, does civic mean voting? Does civic mean helping your neighbor? And another way that I think about civic is I am the place that I live, and the place that I live is me. It's like, I am the community is me. It's sort of a counter to individualism. That's a little bit of how I think about it. Understanding that you are part of the place and the place is part of you. And I don't just mean that as an idea, but I mean that in action too. That's part of the civic in action. And I recently helped to create a publication around civic health, and specifically looking at how artists and other creatives are helping to improve the civic health of communities all across North America. And, you can imagine that a lot of what artists are doing are helping to bring belonging, help to bring joy, help to bring identity and play into the civic domain. In St. Louis, 2 projects come to mind. One has already been mentioned, and I'm not surprised, which is Pillars of the Valley, which is commemorating the community of Mill Creek Valley that was displaced due to highway development, which you also mentioned. There's a lot of themes. And why I think that was, like a kind of a different and interesting process. It's a public art project. Have you all seen it? People witness Pillars of the Valley? It's down by the soccer stadium, done by artist Damon Davis. It's excellent. But I think also, and Shaughnessy, you mentioned this, like the process, it really was a community engagement process. It was a commemorative process. It was a process of honoring memory, bringing the past into the present, into the future. Artists are excellent at that kind of storytelling, and also at that kind of engagement and supporting, the great work that you do, Shaughnessy. So I think that's a great example, and it's on the Greenway footprint. It's part of that project, and it's really special to have that kind of a meaningful public art project along a Greenway. There are a lot of different emotional tones that public art can take along a Greenway, and this one's quite unique in that it's so specific to place, and it's so specific to helping us understand the journey of St. Louis, and why the stitching of the Greenways is so important to heal that bifurcation that highways have created, and the displacement that highways have created. And we have an opportunity to kind of do something different. I also think about the St. Louis mural project, which I presume some of you are familiar with. It was part of the ARPA funds, which were like the COVID funds that a lot of communities got, that produced one mural in every ward in St. Louis, and the Regional Arts Commission led that. And why I think that was really powerful is, that the equitable distribution of these beautiful works in public space that, too often we see them concentrated in communities that can pay for them. or where we expect tourism to be. But this project was everywhere throughout St. Louis, and I encourage you to keep your eyes open for them. There is a map where you can see where all of those murals are placed. And then also it happened, this is so rare, but it happened really quickly. I was an advisor to the project. I think it was like, we started near the beginning of the year, and like by the summer, they were all up, which is just amazing. And if anyone here works on like any public space projects or infrastructure projects, it's really hard to do. We're getting business owners to agree. We're recruiting artists, figuring out designs. Community was a part of the process. The Alder people were all part of the process. So to be able to do that like quickly, but also with so much integrity and so much equity was really, really cool to witness. And it wasn't just a one-off. You can go see all these beautiful murals now.
Can I add to that really quickly? Mallory, you talked a couple of times about stitching, and it's reminding me about, the powerful way that Greenways stitched together the region, through three different counties in the region, which is the size of Rhode Island, the way it stitches together communities and the way it stitches together neighborhood. When I think about Brickline and the fact that the Brickline Greenway will eventually travel through 14 St. Louis City neighborhoods, traveling through, but also telling the stories of each individually. So each individual segment has its own story to tell. We are fortunate to be able to work with a variety of working groups and steering committees. We actually have some working group members here that are in the room who help us unearth the stories of people and place for each of these segments so that we can tell those stories through art, through interpretive signage, through other things. So I just keep thinking about when you talked about stitching, how we're really knitting the fabric, re-knitting the fabric of the community.
So since we're talking a little bit about partnerships, talk about, this is for anybody who wants to answer, what's really the secret to starting a strong collaboration and to keep it going, particularly when you have 2 or 5 or 10 different partners? I think that sometimes partnerships epically fail. And so I think, for like the library partners with lots of organizations, and we always say we want to be the best partner possible. And I think everybody starts with that intention. So how do you start strong and how do you keep it going? Anybody who wants to answer?
All right, I'll jump in. In our name is partnership, St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. I always start off with that's real. Everything that we do is in partnership. And so we are always looking for who would be good partners on a particular objective. And so a recent example is with Kinloch. So Professor Bob Lewis, sitting up in the front here, helped with providing his St. Louis University class an opportunity to help us develop a plan for Kinloch, a land use plan for Kinloch. And to your point, Shaughnessy, this is kind of the first African-American community incorporated in the state of Missouri. But it had become like a dumping ground. And I think many of you might have seen the news last week that significant cleanup that we were doing with that, with the objective of redevelopment in that area. But that project includes a whole lot of partners, to your question, and that includes the Regional Business Council. It also includes the Urban League, ourselves, the community, and just a ton of partners, including my fellow county council or fellow St. Louis County folks like Stephanie Leon Streeter in the back. And others, because it takes a real broad team to make all this work. But we always say we're doing this with Kinloch, not to Kinloch. And so we will see redevelopment in the area that benefits the residents, as well as recognizes the history, as you mentioned earlier, with a cultural trail or something along that line.
I also think with that, and this is a real simple answer, but St. Louis Economic Development Partnership and others, you do what you say you're going to do, You show up, do what you say you're going to do, and hold your partners accountable. It's a pretty simplistic answer, but I think that's one of the things that's just really important in St. Louis is that as we're building all of these partnerships, that we are holding each other accountable, and that we're actually showing up and being responsible for our part and our role.
Mallory, can you talk about the place that you've lived lots of places? So St. Louis and Atlanta are two of those. What do you think we could learn from each other, Atlanta and St. Louis, particularly with the brick line and the belt line?
Well, those two words are so similar. Sometimes I get them confused. So maybe that means something. I think what Atlanta's Beltline does really well, which is where I currently live. Has anyone been to the Beltline in Atlanta? Oh, it's cool. It's cool. You should check it out. So I have the pleasure of being able to work off the Beltline. So, if it's the middle of the day, let's say it's noon and I'm kind of taking a little break, I walk out and there's beautiful, colorful, modular furniture, and there's, two ladies having a chat over here. There's someone having a nap on it over there. Someone else is on a business call. There's some kids climbing on it over there. There are cyclists down here. There's a skate park connected if I go a little bit further. Great skate park. Strollers, beautiful public art. There's a lot happening. Kind of all the best of public space is happening there. So it's really activated, and I think, they've really thought about all the different uses that people will have, and also creating opportunities for gathering too. So it's not just, individual me kind of doing my spandex bike ride, going really fast, but I'm also, my family is able to linger. I'm able to, have a meeting with a colleague or meet somebody new. I met this guy the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'm Kevin. You know Kevin." I'm like, "No, Kevin." He's like, "Beltline Kevin." I'm like, "I'm new here." He's like, "Oh, well, I rollerblade all over the Beltline and I sing. I'm Beltline Kevin." I want a lot of Beltline Kevin. I want a brickline Kevin. I want to, I think, and that's something I love about St. Louis too. There are a lot of characters, and we need them on the brick line. So if you're one of them, make sure that you're ready to go. But there's another thing about the brick line. I know the person who initiated the brick line, so it was actually a graduate school thesis. Those mean something, people. It was a graduate school thesis to build the brick line, or the belt line. See, I'm doing it already. The belt line in Atlanta. And in his vision, so the idea was to kind of take over like an old rail line and make it, a trail, a greenway. But also rail. So rail was supposed to go alongside it. Still not built. Lots of pushback right now. That's a whole nother thing. But also it had a really rigorous anti-displacement program that was both for residents, especially lower income legacy residents, and for businesses, especially small businesses. And unfortunately, when the brick Beltline got underway, the Atlanta Beltline got underway, that part of the vision was really not being tended to in the way that it was originally envisioned. So Beltline got underway, things started happening, a lot of great things started happening, but you started to see property values going up and policies hadn't really been in place to kind of mitigate that. And some small businesses starting to struggle and figure out, can we really be here? My rent's going up. And so it took time for the Beltline to figure out, wait, this is actually really important. Because why? Because this is the identity of the place. This is so much of the fabric of this city that we love. But before I moved to Atlanta, I heard that it was like super grassroots and lots of kind of DIY energy, which I love about St. Louis. And I think it's really important to keep people in place, to keep businesses in place, and to keep like the culture that we love of a place there. So thinking about the economic opportunities and impacts, and being smart with policy on how to keep people and businesses that we love along, the line of here, the brick line will be really important. And Atlanta has since kind of corrected course, but it's still challenging. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the country, Fulton County. So you just have a lot of pressure, economic pressure, and St. Louis has a little less of that for now. As I'm seeing in a lot of data, the population decline, obviously. But like that could change, right? Things could change. The region, we're always innovating. So I would love with the brick line, for us to really recognize kind of that, like as a civic body, that we love the culture of St. Louis, and that requires also that the people of St. Louis, their housing is taken care of, and then also that our businesses are able to stay in place. And even, maybe those are even opportunities to kind of bring all those folks more into the process, which I know is a lot of what GRG is thinking about as you're building out the brick line, engaging those communities along the footprint.
One of the things we haven't really talked about is the network amongst the different greenways in the country. And we've learned a lot from what's happening along the Beltline. We've taken several groups to Atlanta to learn about what's happening there. As a matter of fact, Mark, our CEO, was just there a couple of weeks ago. So we're learning a lot about trials and errors and stops and starts and all of those things, which is really helping us sort of design out how we're moving forward. We actually had the opportunity to take a group of residents to the Indianapolis Cultural Trail a couple of years ago to help them envision what the brick line could look like in a particular community in North St. Louis, because we were having these meetings not week after week, but month after month, to talk about this thing, and it was really hard for them to put their arms around and visualize and grasp what exactly does this mean, and how exactly does this transform a community. And so we were able to go there and experience it in real time, which I really think helped to change the way we were meeting and the way we were envisioning what the brick line could be in that particular neighborhood.
And can I add something? Who are the students here? Students? Okay. What I'm about to say might sound like I'm advocating for something illegal, and I sort of am. Okay. So the city of Chattanooga, where I live. So first off, St. Louis is my favorite type of city. It's like Buffalo, New York, Chattanooga in a small way. It's these cities that are post-industrial, that had like this golden age a long time ago and can't stop talking about it. Like the way y'all talk about the World's Fair, right? So you had this golden age, and you're like, all right, we got shots fired. Okay, but here's the thing. Chattanooga at one point removed 9 benches from downtown, right? It was this reduction thing. It was the opposite of Lafayette, Louisiana. It was, we have this problem with homeless people sitting on these benches, making people uncomfortable. Let's remove them. At the same time, the head of the Parks and Rec Department from New York City was speaking in a room kind of like this, but with also mayors and city councilors. The key to getting those people in the room is have it at 6 o'clock and have cocktails included, because that's what they did. And they were hearing him talk, and he said, if you don't have enough seating, that's your cue to add more, not remove what you have. And chills went down my spine. I was like, wow, I can't believe he said that in front of the mayor's staff, all this. And I went and talked to him afterwards, and he said, oh, I had no idea y'all had done that. And if I had known that, I wouldn't have said anything. I'm not trying to stir the pot. I'm not that type of guy. And then at that moment, I was like, well, I think I am that type of guy. So I came up with this plan. We're going to put a bench where those benches were removed, and we're going to make it obvious. So I found a street artist. Someone who was posting art on the street anonymously, like Chattanooga's Banksy. And I was like, I've got this big bench. I want it to stand out. Can you make it stand out? And this is anonymous, so it's all over Instagram. And he was like, bet. He took it, painted it, and it says, this bench is illegal, but it shouldn't be. And we went and put it where that bench was. We then went and told people on Instagram, when you see this bench, we know the city's probably gonna remove it because it's antagonistic. Take a picture, post the time so that we can see when it gets removed. This made it go viral. We were a group with like 3,000 followers doing stuff like this around town. We got 150,000 followers from this stunt. We got 3 million views, and we launched something called Benches for Bus Stops, where we've built over 200 benches across town at bus stops, and the city doesn't remove them. Y'all have something similar happening right now in St. Louis. The St. Louis urbanists, if you look up, they're building benches, they're putting them at bus stops. So this is the gray area I'm encouraging you to do. Go build a bench with your friends. and go put it at a bus stop. This is something that's additive to your community, because here's the thing. St. Louis is not going to beat New York on finances. You're not going to beat LA on culture and arts. You're not going to beat San Francisco on technology. What can you win at? You could win at community. You could win at happiness. And Enrique Peñalosa was a governor of Bogota, Colombia, and he said, you know what? I'm going to stop competing with New York for finances. I'm going to try to make my community happy. And what he did is he started taking those grass up energy, and instead of trying to stifle it and say, do something better, he said, let's pull that energy and put it into momentum. And so that's why I get so excited about St. Louis, because what you're gonna lack in funding, you have to make up in whimsy, you have to make up in creativity. You have these great projects going, now start little fires everywhere with all of your little bus bench building, skate park, and from that, you can pull together so much. And earlier we asked this question about partnerships. Partnerships thrive in a soil of a connected community. So if you get young people involved, and you don't need to get them involved. They're involved with stuff. Just go find what they're involved in. If they're skating under a bridge, go build them a skate park. Or at the very least, don't tear down their skate park. If they're building these benches, stop saying like, hey, your benches are a liability. Show them how to make a bench that's not a liability. So anyways, that's the biggest thing I'm learning from other communities. And look at the cities that are very similar. Buffalo, New York, post-industrial, they're doing great things.
Okay, we're gonna turn it over to the audience for questions, but I wanna do a quick lightning round. So for each of you, what is one place outside of St. Louis that people should go visit in a public space? And when you're out on a greenway, what one word describes how you feel? Rodney, go.
All right, so I say Minneapolis around the lakes, which is you have the walking bike paths and you have water. The Detroit, you have the water and you have the city walk. And I would also say we have some opportunities here in St. Louis. So let's kind of build on those.
How do you feel when you're on a greenway? One word.
For me, you have to think about this stuff all the time. So when I'm on a greenway and I'm riding my bike, I don't think about anything else.
Nice.
I would recommend the Bentway in Toronto, which is a highway underpass that's really well programmed and just like brings like an armpit of a city to life. It's really beautiful. And also because it's St. Louis, I love the confluence of rivers in Pittsburgh. There's a little park there. We love our rivers, but they're not really accessible. And what Pittsburgh has done is really cool. And it's similarly a post-industrial city of our size. So check it out. And then on greenways, I feel open to nature, to myself, to other people. So open.
Alleyways in Montreal, obviously not a very accessible city for a lot of people, but go to Montreal. Their city was carved up with alleyways. Citizens started planting trees, painting hopscotch, making it a public space, and then the city, instead of stifling it, they started supporting it with these micro grants, and now you have all these green, lush alleyways all throughout Montreal. And on greenways, I guess I would just say that I feel free.
So I'm going a little against the grain. Whenever I travel, I look to see, do they have anything that's similar? I've been to Bahamas and to Aruba in the past year and found their greenways. So when you're out and traveling, just check to see what they got going on and observe how people interact with those spaces. But I will say that we've got 18 active greenways here in St. Louis, in the region, that you can explore 135 plus miles. So explore what we got here. Check out the network. Visit some greenways that you haven't been to and really soak them in. They're all very different. They're all very unique. And you can really learn a lot about the region by just exploring what's in your own backyard. And greenways make me feel energized, however, not quite enough for me to run yet. So hold me accountable.
Okay, do we want to do audience questions?
Yeah, so
Okay.
as you all think of your questions, this is a great time to fill out your survey as well. We'd love to hear from you. And Leah and I will take some mics around to get questions going. So I see one right over here. We'll start right here. And if you know who your question is for, please let us know, or it might be for everyone. Clark?
Mallory, you were talking about the murals. The biggest canvas in St. Louis is the grain elevators by IKEA. And I've been to many other cities that have beautiful murals and artwork. And we were just in Quebec City, and they have actually projected artwork on their grain elevator, which is even bigger than ours. That canvas could have the St. Louis flag. It could have all kinds of things. Are there any projects or talks about making that canvas into something that would be a statement for St. Louis?
Is the person who I had a meeting with yesterday about this in the room? No? Okay. That's not what the meeting was about, but it came up. Well, I love the idea that you're presenting because yes, it is a canvas. They're very large, and I'm not sure which ones you're talking about because I think there are a few.
By IKEA?
By IKEA. Oh, yeah. Tons of opportunities. As you said, like, you can paint on a grain elevator. There are a lot of restrictions around that. You can wrap it. You can like print a mural on something and wrap it, so it's easier to install. You can project. You could also install sculptural elements near it so that you have kind of the contrast between a beautiful, colorful sculptural series and a grain elevator, because it kind of provides like a background, almost like a frame. So there are a lot of ways to make those look more interesting. Do I know of any initiatives currently underway? I know that some people are talking about it. Well, not with that one though, with a different one. So I think, that's also something that we see in cities where somebody tries something within, or even just within the region, because GRG's map is regional. And then that makes it possible, right? I think that's one of the things, especially with smaller mid-sized cities like St. Louis, to just see that something is possible, even though there are a lot of regulations to say that we can't do something. But to say like, hey, we've got a peer city that's our size, like a Pittsburgh, like a Buffalo, like a Chattanooga, that's tried this and it worked out. But I'd love to see, that first seed planted here of even maybe a smaller scale one. Hey, we can do this, and the regulations, we were able to work around them. But yeah, I love that line of thinking, and I think, there's a lot of infrastructure along those lines that we could be thinking about.
Good morning. One comment: we need more John energy in the region, because I think a lot of times we like. Yeah. So for a region that really likes regionalism and engagement and a lot of collaboration and a lot of studies, how are you guys thinking about balancing what John said, which is, I bet if you ask the community how to clean up the park, they'd say, well, get rid of those people and then we'll come back. How do you balance that, call it tactical urbanism or guerrilla urbanism, and just do it, with the more longer form, expansive planning, long-term planning and engagement approaches that usually take a long time to deliver outcomes?
Can I give a story for that? Jersey City has a head of infrastructure. Her name is Barka Patel. Straight out of school, she started in their transportation department, and she was their only city planner. There's this thing called Vision Zero, which is this concept of a city having 0 traffic fatalities for an entire calendar year. Hoboken, New Jersey has done it 8 years in a row. 50,000 people in Hoboken, 0 traffic deaths for the last, and that's pedestrians, cyclists, everyone. She has this same bold vision and comes and says, let's do it. They're not gonna do it by getting huge grants. So she's like, 1, if we're gonna send out a survey, we are going to do something. We will not ask people what they think of this bike lane without implementing something. Even if it's a 3-hour pop-up experimental bike lane, we're gonna do it. 2, anything that we do, the people who are involved with the decision-making are also going to take part in the implementation. If we're painting a street, then we are literally having city planners and engineers out there applying the paint to the street. And then 3, we're gonna do what we can with what we have. So this even involved, this is a dangerous intersection, let's make it safe. Oh, we have a grant for that one, let's move on to the next one. She's like, no, the grant's gonna take 3 years. What can we do right now? Jersey City had a 10-year plan to get to Vision Zero. They got to it in 5. Everyone told the mayor, what she is doing is political suicide. Nobody likes her. She's moving too fast. She's doing too much. If you stake if you tie your wagon to her, you are going to lose your next election. He was a brand new mayor. He went to her and told her this, and he said, is this the right thing to do? She said it's the right thing to do, and he listened to her, and within 5 years, they hit Vision Zero. I'm getting goosebumps right now because every time I tell this story, it's a matter of, one, political will. So they still sent out the surveys. They got the public involved. But the problem with surveys is they're often weaponized. They're often like, see, the public doesn't want this. But you know who didn't want it? Grumpy, old retirees who didn't want to see the neighborhood change didn't want it. And they're the ones filling out the surveys. So it was a political release valve to say, okay, we don't have to change the street because the neighborhood doesn't want it. No, very grumpy people didn't want it. Second, some good people are also afraid of change. We all experience change as loss. And so we have to sometimes have the political will and say, this is the right thing to do, even if you're resisting it. And when you do that, Chattanooga's Greenway, people didn't want it. People didn't want it through their communities. People didn't want it. They're saying it's going to bring riffraff. And now it's the star part of every community that it runs through. People love it. And so always tie community feedback to action so that surveys don't become a way to just say, well, we don't have to do anything. And then second, do what you can with what you have, because it'll never get started if you're waiting for the $50 million grant to come through, which is Chattanooga's most interesting project right now, is waiting for a $50 million investment to come through to do it.
But I also see, I don't see those two parts as at odds, honestly. I think tactical urbanism and kind of longer term, more, that kind of process. I think they're all part of a healthy ecosystem. I think we need both. And then I think we also have these opportunities for them to work together. The early wins, like when you have a long-term project, you show early wins. That's a way to keep building political will and keep people excited. I mean, I even think about with the Brick Line having like Damon's work in Mill Creek Valley be an early demonstration of kind of where we're going. And I also think about in the Twin Cities with the Green Line, which is a light rail expansion, when there was all this construction that tore up the streets and blocked business access. They engaged a local arts nonprofit called Springboard for the Arts to activate the street during construction, to make a there to keep people coming to businesses, keep business activity up. So instead of, we typically see you probably know this, construction business activity declines. In fact, during Irrigate, business activity stayed consistent. In some places, business activity actually went up because there was so much happening on the street. It was a cool place to be. And that's a way to kind of pepper these more like kind of grassroots, tactical, for me, a lot of them arts-based creative happenings along a continuum of something that's more long-term and complicated. So I think they can work together.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering how we can advocate for greenways by where we live or similar things. So very selfishly, I live between Big Bend and McCausland, and I keep wanting to walk to Forest Park more. But how can we take personal action to support things like that?
To have the answer to this. But, first of all, there's a ton of ways to get information or ideas to Great Rivers Greenway. The really easiest one is info@grgstl.org. So send us an email. But we're very here. We're very open. You can call any member of the team and have conversations with us. I will say that the area that you're talking about, keep your ear to the ground, because you may hear some things soon. I know that there's some work being done in the area, but we always want to gather ideas from the community, and we take those and we do map them out and put them into our box of potential greenway projects. And then as we're working every few years or so to develop the strategic plan or the regional plans for how we move forward, we're pulling those ideas back out to the service to identify and to think about what we can be doing next. But don't be shy. Reach out and share and say, hey, it would be really great if there was a connector here. We get those all the time. I think all of us get those all the time. And those ideas don't just go away. They are there. We keep them and we do look back at them. But I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I mean, an example of, the community kind of speaking out and saying, we think that it should be going, new greenways should be put in this particular area. One of our incubators is the Danforth, next to Danforth Center. It's called the Helix Center. And it connects to that 39 North, all the ag tech jobs. And the folks were saying, hey, we want those amenities too. When we go across the country, we see that, these greenways are kind of attached to their particular innovation and entrepreneurship kind of initiatives. And so this is before Mark had the job, so it wasn't a contingency that he'd do this before to get the job. But we work with Mark and a number of the owners of other businesses around that area, as well as our Danforth Center, Research and Development Center, to make sure we had that amenity right there for them as well. So to Shaughnessy's point, you just keep speaking about it, you do get attention.
I also want to bring the tactical urbanism approach back in the room, because I'm thinking about open streets. Do we still have that in St. Louis? I used to do something, hey, no. So this is also like very Peñalosa-esque in Bogota, but open streets is closing down streets so that people can use them, like no cars, right? So you're biking, you're cycling, you're jogging, you're with your stroller, you're rolling. So I'm also thinking about how could you think about short-term ways to get your neighbors together to experience the benefit of having a greenway in your neighborhood. So maybe that even could mean like getting permits to just close a few blocks of where you want it to go and have that just be kind of like an outdoor recreation space for a little bit. I think that there are some ways to kind of, and that can like build community excitement, which can maybe drive, a little bit more organizing around getting something built.
And when Mallory said earlier, like, tactical urbanism is a continuation, it's on a continuum leading to permanent change. Like, that is so important to see its role in long-term change. Like, the goal isn't to have ratty homemade benches all over town forever. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to show intent. And there's this term called like desire lines or desire paths, where you see where people walk in the grass, and that's a good indicator of where you need a sidewalk. And so, what Mallory is advocating for is essentially creating these desire lines through your community. When you first close down a street, businesses might be against it. They're like, wait, our customers show up in cars. What are you going to do if you take away cars? But if you're able to throw a banging block party and their business goes up 3x, they're like, when are you going to do the next one? How can we help pay to rent the barricades? And so this is I love that idea. And I think that's a big thing is, closed streets to cars are really the only time streets are truly open. When a kid can ride their tricycle on it, when, an elderly person who otherwise worries about crossing the street can now sit in the street in a chair. That's what I think you could use more of.
And I will just add as well that I think Great Rivers Greenway is never happier when we're not the only game in town doing this work. So just in terms of that question about advocacy, certainly, yes, we are always open for business, but we are also not the only ones that can affect this change. So if you're talking to your local elected officials or your community about their streets planning or parks planning, there's lots of other folks that can be building this kind of infrastructure. And so I just invite that to be a broader, it's us and it's yes and lots of different entities that can do that work. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we are going to call it. It is 9:30. But first, round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. And thank you for coming out today. Again, thank you for engaging, for your great questions. Some of us will be able to stick around a little bit if you have some other questions. And I cannot say it enough, take some food to go. Eat some more food. Please fill out your survey, and we will see you on a Greenway. Thank you very much.